Hello BookTube. Today for Tag Thursday, I will be doing the Rootin, Tootin, June on the Range tag. This tag was created by Steve Donahue, and it celebrates the upcoming June on the Range. June on the Range is a BookTube event in its soon-to-be second year, created by Michael K. Vaughan, in which participants read Westerns in the month of June. Westerns are were a genre of fiction, really historical fiction, set in the American West, which is roughly defined, as Steve does, as being west of the Missouri, or at least west of the Mississippi, east of the Rockies, south of the Canadian border, and north of the Mexican border. So yeah, and I will leave links to both Steve's channel and Michael K. Vaughan's channel in the show notes down below. So prompt number 1, a ways out west. Have you ever been to the American West? So using that rubric, Texas counts as being part of the American West, although Texas also counts as being part of the Old South and all that entails. And so Texas is kind of in a bit of a weird space where it's both southern and western. But for the purposes of this tag, we'll go with Texas as part of the American West, as sort of that rough geographic definition that Steve Donahue created. Have I been elsewhere in this section? Not really, except for like flying over it to go to San Francisco or Portland, Oregon. Prompt number 2, Dry Gulch. What's the smallest town you've ever visited? And how small is your town right now? So the smallest town I've ever visited is probably Oglesby, which is a tiny city between McGregor and Gatesville in Coryell County. And it has to have at least, I think, less than 1,000 people, although it might have more now. And I might have driven through smaller communities that I just never noticed, because there are quite a few unincorporated communities and stuff like that that's littered all over where I live. So I might have driven through one or been driven, since I don't actually drive, and just not noticed it, except for weird batches of houses here and there. And the current population of my hometown, McGregor, Texas, is about 5,338, give or take. Possibly a bit more, since that was the census figures from 2020. Okay, prompt number 3. Where the buffalo roam. Have you ever seen an American bison in person? Not that I recall. I don't think I don't remember seeing one at the Cameron Park Zoo when I went, any of the times I've went. And the most recent time was about 7 years ago. Me and my mom took Famine and Pestilence, my two nieces, the older 2 of the 4 children of the apocalypse, when war was just a baby, and we decided to give my sister-in-law some rest from the other 2, since it was spring break. Now, maybe there was a time when I saw one and I just don't remember it, because when I was much younger, probably not even 10, my mom took me and my brother to a safari near Glen Rose that might have had a bison, but I don't recall much from that. Um, so, second question of this batch is, or what's the largest hoofed animal you've ever seen? A giraffe. I'm pretty sure I saw a giraffe at the Cameron Park Zoo. And if not a giraffe, then I've probably seen like zebras there and at that safari. And again, I just don't quite recall it. And finally, or do you have evidence that you live near coyotes? I can't read like the signs to say whether or not there are coyotes living relatively near me. I do live in a more sort of densely populated part of the town. There are a few wooded areas on the other side of 84 that possibly could have coyotes near around Emsler Park. And of course, there are any number of wooded areas dotted here and there in the rural parts of the county. And I am relatively close to Mother Neff State Park, which probably has coyotes, but again, I don't know for sure. Prompt number 4. Old Doc Frye. What's your history with Westerns? Spotty. Westerns are not a genre I particularly gravitate towards. They just have never really interested me. And to be honest, there's kind of that period of like 19th century American history of sort of the Western states and Great Plains states. I'm really, like, I've maybe read one book on that, Dreams of El Dorado by H.W. Brands, which is really good, but nothing else really. And the only Western novel I've ever, well, I can't say read because I bailed on it, and that was Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry, which I didn't get on with. So, anyway, so novels, I've read up through the beginning of the second section of Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry before I gave up in frustration. TV, I think I've probably seen scenes of Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. My mom, I think, really liked that show when it was coming on. And movies, I've seen For a Few Dollars More, A Fistful of Dollars, parts of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I don't know if I've seen all of it. I've seen The Magnificent Seven, 3:10 to Yuma. I've seen bits of Unforgiven. And I think that's it. Prompt number 5. Diamond Lil at the Rialto Saloon. What's your relationship with alcohol? Ever had a friendship with a bartender? So my relationship with alcohol is non-existent. I do not understand how anybody can stomach that crap. I have tried alcoholic beverages a few times in my life, and when I do, it's tasted horrible. What I would imagine paint thinner or turpentine to taste like. It is just hideous. How? Yeah, I don't understand that at all. So if there is ever me going to Hyde Cottage, we would have to find me something else to drink. Because no. And friendship with a bartender, I've never really been in a bar long enough to actually befriend a bartender, so no. Prompt number 6. The City Slicker from Back East. What do you consider the best Western you've ever read? Well, Does history count? Dreams of Eldorado by H.W. Brands. Because, I mean, there's very slim pickings. Because, yeah, I mean, probably the go-to answer would be Lonesome Dove, but I just don't see it. So we're going to go with history. Prop number 7. The man with the badge. Have you ever been in charge of other people? What's the most authority you've ever handled, and would you be good at it? I've never really been in charge of people. I tend to work best alone. I mean, there was a time when I was offered, when I worked in retail, not the assistant manager, but sort of the third manager, which I kind of didn't take because, yeah, I didn't drive, and so I'd have to, well, I mean, there were a few things about that position that I really didn't want to do, so I didn't. And then, I don't know if I would be good at it or not. And I think this is the final question. Oh, nope, there's 2 more. Prop number 8, the Tombstone Kid, which is actually a pretty good name for an outlaw. Have you ever fired a gun, been a gun aficionado, been shot? I've never fired a gun. There was a time when I was in college, and we went to visit my grandparents, who were at the time living in a trailer on one of my aunts and her husband's property. And my uncle offered to let me and my brother shoot some of his guns, and my brother took that opportunity, and I refused. I'm not a gun aficionado, and I've never been shot. Prompt number 9. It ain't the bullet that gets you, it's the fall. How would you ideally like to cash in your chips? At the casino. In my sleep. And finally, prompt number 10. Tag some owl hoots. What are owl hoots? I've never heard of that before. Anyway, if you'd like to do this tag, consider yourselves tagged, and I'll be back tomorrow with weekly reads and maybe my June TBR, because my plans for this week haven't quite gone, largely because I didn't make a video yesterday because I really wasn't feeling all that well. So yeah, so it's kind of going to be, because I know in my 890th video, I want to put out a call for a Q&A. So I need to kind of figure out what that number is and where it's going to fall. So it's going to be sometime next week, I think. Hopefully it's not on Wednesday, because I'm going to do my book haul on Wednesday. So anyway, but I'll try to have at least 2 videos up tomorrow. So any booktube, that was the Rootin, Tootin, June on the range tag. And again, if you would like to do this tag, consider yourselves tagged, and I will be back soon. So until then, have a great afternoon and stay safe.